What's my favorite thing to do when I'm not at work? It's absolutely to be outdoors. I don't have to go very far because right out my front door we have a permaculture inspired food forest. And that is an extraordinary transition from a suburban yard into a deeply nourished, we actually used volcanic ash when we first laid it down over the grass. Many, many years of leaves now. We have, well, 3, 4 years of leaves, decomposing, mulching, adding compost from our house compost bin. And the garden has turned into just this extraordinary, going from a pretty dry suburban garden now to sinking a shovel in and turning it over and just having it full of worms. Pretty much you throw a seed down and it starts growing in this garden. It's a food forest because it's designed ultimately to not need much maintenance, just like a forest. So there are various layers of trees, shrubs, perennials, even mushrooms. We have shiitakes growing. And so on this relatively little plot of land, we have more food. I often laugh with my clients and say, when you leave here, you better lock your door or you'll go home with zucchini. So being in the garden, being in the earth, growing food is just a wonderful opportunity. And also just being part of the nourishing food cycle. So every day we go out, we're able to pick from the garden, bringing in, the various microbes and nutrients that a healthy garden will provide into our diet every day. So there's a lot of stuff in the news now about the microbiome. We get that filling us in droves from just eating out of our garden every day. I got started working in my garden from a friend's salon that she had, raising consciousness about what you can do to be part of the solutions that need to happen in the world right now. So we went to see a movie. It was actually a BBC-inspired movie called Farm for the Future, looking at a farm in Great Britain that had fallen on hard times. A man's daughter comes home to help her aging father on the farm and realizes there is so much you can do from a permaculture viewpoint. So permaculture is an Australian term from a school of thought called permanent agriculture. And it's a way of looking not just at agriculture, but how you do life. So when you have a healthy garden, when you have a healthy microbiome, a way that you eat in the world, you start to promote health and well-being on every level, from working in your own food production to being able to share, being able to bring people in and eat together, having the elements in a healthy garden that go into making a healthy body all combined in a simple garden approach. It involves water management, looking at the lay of the land for how you plant things, so you're working with the sun, the cycles of nature, finding things that are growing in your climate and in your region so that you're promoting birds and butterflies and attractors based on the animals and the creatures in your environment. So permaculture can be done anywhere on the planet, but it'll be done differently everywhere depending on what the different environments provide. So that's what we've been doing in our garden, and it's just remarkable what transition and transformation has occurred in our garden now. And the amount of food that we get on such a small piece of land is, as I said, just remarkable. But that's been really a fun thing. The other thing that I found out is how many flowers you can actually eat. So I love growing ornamentals, but now I realize you can actually have ornamentals and eat them too. So we have gladiolas and daylilies and nasturtiums and violets and just an extraordinary amount of flowers that you can actually eat. Marshmallow I had this morning in my smoothie. So that's pretty neat, figuring out that there are things that grow locally that support us, that nurture us, that are beautiful, and that we can grow really easily. So that's been pretty cool. I like to do it because I feel like I'm a part of the cycle of life that supports our well-being. There's an interesting study that was done that found you actually get B vitamins coming in through your skin when you work in the earth. And for anybody who's ever done gardening, there's almost a pull that you get towards gardening. And I wonder if that's not because there's certain elements and certain vitamins and minerals that we get just by being in close contact with the earth. Plus, we're interacting with the creatures of a healthy environment, some which we see and some which we can't even see, that become part of us, that help protect us in different instances when creating immune function strength and feeling connected to our place. There's a lot of psychological well-being that comes from that too. So and just watching things emerge and then get big. It's springtime now, Pacific Northwest, very early spring. And so things are just beginning to come up, but to be able to walk through my garden and say, oh, I can eat that and I can pick that, and all the different things that I can add to my food every day, that's part of the natural cycle of this garden coming into its full, robust, full bloom, is really exciting. I love it.
Yeah.
What it means to me to be able to do this kind of gardening and connection to the earth is that we each individually can take small steps that, when you add them up, make for really big steps in the right direction. In this day of modern packaging and plastics, and realizing the toxins that are building up in our bodies from just going to the supermarket, and how much garbage we generate from the styrofoam and the plastic, and really being disconnected from what we eat, and not knowing the quality of the food and what is in the food when we are getting it from different sources, far away, irradiated because they have to come over the border. All of that leaves us feeling pretty powerless, and taking in these essential biochemistry is coming in through our mouth every day in the form of food. When we're that disconnected from it, a lot of times our illness, our chronic illness, we really don't know why we don't feel well. But all of a sudden, when I take it back into my hands, and literally, and I'm eating from my garden, I'm eating according to what the season's providing, I'm giving myself a step up in health and vitality that I think you just can't really fully measure. But it's had a really profound effect on myself and my family. What's my favorite thing to do when I'm not at work? It's absolutely to be outdoors. I don't have to go very far, because right out my front door we have a permaculture-inspired food forest. And that is an extraordinary transition from a suburban yard into a deeply nourished, we actually used volcanic ash when we first laid it down over the grass. Many, many years of leaves now. We have, 3-4 years of leaves, decomposing, mulching, adding compost from our house compost bin. And the garden has turned into just this extraordinary, going from a pretty dry suburban garden now to sinking a shovel in and turning it over and just having it full of worms. Pretty much you throw a seed down and it starts growing in this garden. It's a food forest because it's designed ultimately to not need much maintenance, just like a forest. So there are various layers of trees, shrubs, perennials, even mushrooms. We have shiitakes growing. And so on this relatively little plot of land, we have more food. I often laugh with my clients and say, when you leave here, you better lock your door or you'll go home with zucchini. So being in the garden, being in the earth, growing food is just a wonderful opportunity. One of my more exciting moments in gardening in this house, we live in a pretty traditional suburban neighborhood, and we came in and, we had a green yard like everyone else and trees and stuff like this. And all of a sudden I brought in a load of leaves in the fall and covered up the grass 3 feet deep with leaves, and trying not to have them all blow around. I then put a layer of wood chips on top of them, and we kind of got rid of the lawn. And neighbors who had formerly been fairly friendly began to look at us like, oh my God, the hillbillies have moved in next door, and weren't really talking to us anymore. So that was kind of sad. I really felt badly. But we pressed on, and first year, not a lot of productivity in the yard, but by the second year, things were really starting to come through. So I think one of my happier moments, I was out working in the yard in the second year, and things were really coming. And my neighbor across the street, who's a master gardener herself, came over and she said, I just wanted to tell you that when we first saw what you were doing to the yard, we were quite worried. But now that we're looking and seeing what's coming through, your yard is beautiful. And I just got such a feeling of satisfaction that, she would be able to see the changes that were taking place as being a positive thing for the neighborhood, because no other yard quite looks like ours in this neighborhood. And it is a beautiful yard.